Ready, Kurt. Good evening, Commissioners. You do not have your chair or your vice chair available this evening, so you will need to elect a temporary chair for the meeting tonight. So that would be your first order of business.
I think we have an audio issue that we might want to resolve real quick.
Yeah, I think the board folks. Should I just motion to nominate you as chair for this meeting? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I've done it a lot.
Ellie, can you shoot the back wall and make sure that pushes down? You can with that black remote. Stand up over those monitors, make sure it hits 0. We should be okay.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. I would move that we elect Brenna Buchanan Young as our temporary chair for this meeting.
And I will second that motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, do we need to go through the first off? Yeah.
Yes, Ellie, will you lead us through comments?
Yep. Ellie Mullins, good evening. Welcome to the November 21st Historic Resources Commission meeting. With me is Lynn Braddock-Zollner, the Historic Resources Administrator, and Avery Kerner, Planner 2. Together, we will work alongside the chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings. Before we begin, I have a few reminders to share. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. For those who are attending the meeting virtually, please remember to mute yourself when you are not actively speaking to help minimize distractions. When the chair calls for public comment on an item, anyone attending in person may approach the podium to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually and would like to provide public comment on an item, please use the raise hand function to be called upon. We also ask that everyone state their name before they speak to ensure everyone is able to follow along. Now I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Okay. Up first, receive communications from other commissions, State Historic Preservation Officer, and general public.
You do have one communication this evening that was added to your packet earlier today from the East Lawrence Neighborhood Association proposing a demolition moratorium for East Lawrence until their neighborhood plan is done. And yeah, that's it.
Is that business that we deal with now, or do we deal with it later?
For what?
I'm making a decision about this.
We can talk about it under miscellaneous items, or if they speak during public comment, you can talk about it then.
Okay. Is there any ex-parte communications?
Yes, I had a meeting with a small group.
About,
Yeah.
Oh, about East Lawrence.
Okay. Declarations, abstentions? None. Committee reports?
we've had two committee meetings. The Demolition Review Committee met and got a lot of really good work done and some homework assignments done. Or that they're working on, and we've scheduled another meeting for early December where hopefully we can start putting together something to bring back to the HRC in December to start working on taking that information to the City Commission. The Survey Committee also met, and we can discuss that under miscellaneous matters at the end of the meeting. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about what they're doing and what their next steps are.
Awesome. Thank you. Consent agenda?
I'm sorry, where am I? No, it's different. It's not the,
Okay. Did anybody have questions on any of the projects on the consent agenda? Okay, I move that we.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I would like to make one just slight correction to the application for 800 Broadview Street. Just because I am a stickler and I apologize, but can we just update the application so that it says 800 Broadview Drive?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that's my only comment.
Good catch. All right. I move to approve the consent agenda items.
I second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approve 4-0. Open up public hearing items number 1, 1308 Vermont Street,
You need to
HRC.
do public comment first.
Oh. I skipped over public comment. I thought it was all got moved to miscellaneous.
This is
I'm sorry,
the
Barry.
LPA letter.
Hi, I'm Barry Shalinsky. I'm president of East Lawrence Neighborhood Association. I guess first I would like to just thank you all for your service and what you do. I'm on the BZA, so I know that takes a lot of time, and you deal with a lot of angry people probably sometimes, and it's nice just to have some appreciation. So I do appreciate specifically the support that you gave for demolition moratoria for University Place and for the homes of the founders of the NAACP in Lawrence. And I'm here to ask that you consider giving or recommending that same protection for the East Lawrence neighborhood. The thing that we have in common is that the East Lawrence neighborhood plan is also under consideration and active consideration after being put on hold for 2 years for the consideration of the land development code. I guess we were never really given a reason why it all just sort of went dead in October of 2022, but I think that is the reason. But now that that process is moving along, the neighborhood plan is reopening, and it's our intention to make sure that several topics come up that deal with historic properties and historic preservation in the neighborhood. I sent you all a letter. I'm not going to belabor this anymore. I just ask that you consider this, that you hopefully put this matter on an agenda in the near future for public comment, for consideration, and hopefully for a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Barry, real quick, I've got a question. How would you define the boundaries of the East Lawrence neighborhood?
Well, it's actually like
That you're
officially in city planning documents, but basically it's from the river to 15th Street. Downtown is kind of the west side is kind of a jagged boundary that follows downtown. So, at between 13th and 14th Street, it's all the way over to Mass, whereas at other places, it's like Rhode Island or the alley between Rhode Island and New Hampshire. And then on the east, it would be the Burroughs Creek Trail.
Okay.
So, yeah, East Lawrence as opposed to the generic Eastern Lawrence. I'm not trying to do anything outside of our purview. I mean, as a general proposition, I think anywhere in the city, really, we should consider that buildings are more at risk with duplex zoning than with single-family zoning. But I don't want to get out of my lane, so
Okay.
thanks. Any other?
Yeah, Barry, I have a question. Do you have a suggestion as to how long you would want the moratorium on demolition applications for East Lawrence to extend to?
For however long it takes for the plan to be discussed and adopted, I'm guessing that would be months and not years. But the planning staff has not come to the neighborhood association with a specific proposed timetable yet. They've asked to be on our January or February agenda, so it is gonna, the process is gonna start pretty soon, but I'm not sure how long it's gonna take.
Okay.
Hopefully in a few weeks, we should have a better idea of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks a lot.
Commissioners, instead of discussing this tonight, since y'all got the letter today, staff can put this on your agenda in December or January, whichever you prefer, when hopefully you have a full commission for the discussion, and also have some input and insight from staff.
I would prefer not to do that. I thought that we could take care of this today because we also have a report coming up about our subcommittee on the historic surveys, and I think it's pertinent to this topic.
I don't think we can have a solution today.
Well, you haven't heard the report of the survey committee yet. So that's what I'm saying, is I think I'd like to have, talk about the survey committee, I guess, which is at the end of the agenda, and come back to this and talk about how it intersects.
How does so this is a question, how does the survey overlap with the neighborhood plan?
Well, and we can talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the survey. There is a big difference between working on a neighborhood plan and doing a historic resources survey,
Right.
which was what this city commission was supporting, because hopefully with the neighborhood plan, you do have to adjust the timeline quite a bit over time to make sure you're getting enough public input and to make sure that changes are made that reflect that public input. And so when we did our first rounds of public input, we did get some people who were interested in historic survey and historic resources, but we also got some people who were not supportive of an overlay district or historic designation. So that's something that the neighborhood plan will flush out
Right.
when we go through that process. We are hoping to get back started in January. Hopefully, we don't want to condense the timeline to rush through to get a product, because we want to make sure we have that public input in consideration. So there's really not, unlike the moratorium for University Place and the Founders Survey, there's not a date that I can tell you that it should be completed by.
Right.
So that's a big difference between the two.
Well, they are very different scopes of work.
Well, I still disagree, but go ahead.
So the soonest we could hear this is December? Hear about the neighborhood plan? Like to have a discussion about it would be December?
Or for this request. I was going to put this request on your December or January agenda.
I think, the sooner the better, so I would prefer December.
Okay. Is that, I can't
Yeah.
see because of the monitors.
Yeah.
I think it's December.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah, December.
Mike Delaney from the Lawrence Preservation Alliance. I suspect I'll have some other a public input when you get to the survey plan. But with respect to the demolition moratorium, it's important that the moratorium go into effect at the earliest possible date, because once there's an open lot created on any of those properties that are subject to the survey, whoever has created the open lot is going to be able to do whatever the new land development code will allow. And so there is an incentive to get started with the demolitions now rather than wait and see, till the new land development code. They won't be able to submit a plan or then, but they can submit a demolition request right now. And so waiting until January or something is likely to result in the destruction of a couple, not through your action, but is likely to produce the destruction of a couple of buildings that might be eligible to be covered by some sort of historic protection down the road.
So, Lynn, on the timeline for where we're at with the city commission and the moratorium, it sounded like on Tuesday it was sent back to staff to draft something. When was that going to come back to the city commission?
They did not give us a date certain to bring that back.
Okay.
It's just a matter of planning staff doing the research and getting them, and legal staff writing the ordinance and getting it back to them.
Okay.
And one of the things that we have been discussing at a staff level is the start date and the end date.
Yeah.
And so we can certainly take that consideration into, and give that as an option to the city commission for a start date on the adoption of the ordinance.
Would it be, since that's already in the works, is it possible to, after we have our discussion in December, one potential outcome of that is that we decide to also recommend East Lawrence neighborhood also have a moratorium? If I understand, that's the request.
Right.
I know we can't have it for the entire time to develop a plan. I mean, it's a very different open-ended scope of work. So, and I don't want to put pause on the moratorium that we're working on. So could we at a later time also recommend a moratorium for the East Lawrence?
I think that's a discussion you can have at
In
your
December,
December
okay.
meeting.
Okay.
And if we wait until December, you're saying that that won't hurt our opportunity or chances of asking the city commission to include East Lawrence on a demolition moratorium for buildings older than 50 years?
I think they need to be two separate things. If you recall, when we talked about a demolition moratorium for University Place and the Founders sites, we had a public hearing. It was in the newspaper. People knew what was going on. And then when it got placed in the city commission meeting, there was public notice and people knew what was going on, and there was a public hearing for that. And, so there was public process there. We haven't had any of that yet for a discussion about East Lawrence, and it's a much larger area. So that's why I'm saying you probably want to wait and advertise this and have these discussions at your December meeting. I do not recommend trying to add it to the moratorium that is already in the works, because they are not similar. They are two different things.
Understood.
What makes them different?
Well, one is for a neighborhood plan, and one is for a historic resources survey that is already funded and underway.
Very different scopes of work and timelines.
But East Lawrence is also in the midst of a delayed neighborhood plan.
Neighborhood plans can take years.
I understand that.
We can't
I
ask
get
for
that.
that.
I'm still trying to understand what you're seeing as stark differences, because I'm seeing some bleeding of
Well, with the Historic Resources Survey, one of the reasons that staff was so supportive, and I kind of got the feeling from the City Commission, was because there was a definitive date. It had very specific, we have already been awarded, the surveys have already started the process, we've got something in process, let's don't do something different that would harm something that we've already invested money and time into. This is completely different in that it's a neighborhood plan. It needs public input. Like I said, when we first did all of our public input, there was not a good consensus of the neighborhood, what the outcome of that neighborhood plan is going to be. So there's a lot of discussion to have with the East Lawrence neighborhood as to what they want. As far as, do they want a historic survey? Do they want design guidelines? Do they want an overlay district? Those are all things that they'll have to work out in that neighborhood plan.
So if we wait about 20 minutes, we'll get to it.
They're separate things.
I know,
Okay.
I'm saying, in our agenda tonight, we have another report coming up.
I have a question, Lynn. The current historic survey that's being done on the NAACP founders, I presume that includes properties in East Lawrence?
Yes.
Does the current ordinance being drafted for the demolition moratorium, does that include structures as part of that historic survey, or is it just University Place?
No, it's for University Place neighborhood, and then there are 30 sites with the NAACP Founders Survey. So they are specific buildings that moratorium would impact.
The draft ordinance, would it apply to those 30
Yes.
identified? Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Sure.
Thank you. Mandy Enfield, I'm president of the University Place Neighborhood Association, and I wanted to thank you guys for the letter you sent about the Land Development Code on our behalf, and we really appreciate that work. And I just came in support of East Lawrence, and I hope for them that they can have the same privilege that we have with this. We made a lot of noise, and we're lucky to be in the process of pursuing our historic designation. And I do see, I don't understand the technical differences, but I do see it as kind of comparable works with the neighborhood plan and the historic designation. I want to offer, there is one property in East Lawrence that was for sale, contract pending, the Land Development Code going through and at the last City Commission meeting. So there are developers looking at East Lawrence properties with the Development Code in mind, and it is urgent. The property that I know of is, I don't think there's any risk of demolition for it, but just the idea that it is, that people are thinking about it as far as preparing for April when it goes into effect. And as you guys think through what options you have, what creative solutions you could come up with for different historic neighborhoods or older neighborhoods in the community. Thinking about how the City Commission has talked about the April to April timeline, the first year of the Land Development Code as being sort of like a test period, and then we're going to go back and see if there's loopholes or anything that's not working. When you do draft whatever you can for East Lawrence and other neighborhoods, thinking about that April to April timeline, because I believe, if I'm correct on it being April, not a year from November, but being a year from April when it's adopted, that would be a point when we could go to the Planning Commission or the City Commission and ask for changes to be put into the Land Development Code to continue those protections moving forward. Yeah, the logistics I have no idea on, so I really appreciate your guys' expertise as you move into it, and thank you.
Do you happen to know the address of the home that's being considered for demolition?
No, not a home considered for demolition. It was just a property that was contract pending the code being adopted. So it was.
So it's not a structure?
There is a structure, but it's not up for demolition. I don't think it would be considered, but it's the Friends Church in East Lawrence.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's an empty lot next to it. So it was, the point I just wanted to make was that people are thinking about the land development code already
Yes.
as they're making development decisions.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very much.
yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it. I think, can I just say one thing? I completely understand the angst and the fear of losing structures. I think, we're working on the moratorium for those two neighborhoods, well, like the neighborhood and the two surveys. We're also looking at already rewriting the demolition ordinance as part of the development code. So that'll be there. And there, even as it is today, every demolition permit that goes in is published in the Journal World, and you have 30 days to kind of show up to a meeting and say something. So I don't know if that kind of puts some of the angst a little bit at ease, is that you have a 30-day to kind of raise your hand and say, look at this. It's a lot of work to keep an eye on it, but I do recommend if that would help kind of put everybody a little bit at ease that we're working on it. Okay. All right, public hearing items, HRC 24-1027, 1308 Vermont.
Commissioners, this is an accessory structure demolition proposal for 1308 Vermont Street. It requires a certificate of approval, and it also requires review under the Oread neighborhood design guidelines. You've seen this property in not so distant past when the initial intent was to rehabilitate the primary structure that was on the site, and when they got into the work, they were not able to save the structure, and so you approved a new structure for the site. And you'll see that kind of in the background of a couple of these photographs. This is the property location here where the red dot is. This is the listed property. And then this gray area is the context area. This is the site plan for the property. This is the primary structure, the new construction that was just recently built. And this is the existing garage. Looking at some of the photos, you'll see the new structure in the background. This is the alley elevation of the structure. And then just walking around, and you can see some of the damage all around the structure. And again on this side. And the interior of the structure. And you can see there's no floor, and the sills are gone, and then obviously the roof damage and even wall damage. Normally, for the demolition of an accessory structure that is in this poor of a shape, staff would review that administratively under Chapter 22, and staff does support issuing the certificate of approval for this project. But this also, it's required to be reviewed under the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines, and those guidelines specifically say that any structure, whether it's primary or accessory, if it's 50 years or older, has to come to the Historic Resources Commission. So that's why you're seeing this evening, because of that guideline. The structure is over 50 years old, and but staff is of the opinion that it does warrant demolition at this time because of the condition of the structure. And this actually came to us when one of the inspectors was at the site for the new construction, turned it in for concerns because of the condition of the structure, and that, you know, something needed to take place pretty soon because of the condition. So that's how we got here, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you may have.
I think we're good. Applicant present?
Good evening, Paul Werner, Architects. I think Lynn did an excellent summary. There's just nothing left. There's no footings, there's no plates. We probably should have dealt with it maybe when we worked on the house, but we were so focused on the house and trying to figure out what we were going to do with that. So appreciate your support. Feel like this is one that I mean, it probably ought to come down and we move on. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we need to wait for Phil for a quorum?
Do y'all have any discussion? And you have to do public comment still.
A public comment on this item? Is there any? No.
My memory's poor about when we dealt with 1308 Vermont House itself. Maybe you could fill in some time, just refreshing our memory about
So we were, we started to renovate it. We did, after we got in there, you know, our client just recently purchased it when we were getting in there. So somebody else owned it, clearly let it deteriorate. We walked LPA through the whole thing before we brought it back to you guys. LPA agreed with us that there was really no way to save the house. And that's when we came back with you with the new structure. Said we probably should have walked them through the garage while we were there, but we were so focused on the house and renovating it and getting it fixed. So that's how we wound up here. But as we always know, I like to emphasize that my clients were not the ones that let it deteriorate, but for LPA to agree with us and to come here and support the demolition, I mean, that's how bad it really was. So it's a brand new structure. It's awesome, fully sprinkled, fire alarm, 8 people. So it's you know, better today than it was a couple of years ago. So this will just help complete the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there still no public comment? Okay, discussion?
Tear down.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready for a motion? I move that we find the proposed project meets the standards of review in Chapter 22, Section 22-507, and the design criteria in Chapter 22, Section 22-508, and issue the certificate of approval for the proposed project. All those in favor?
You gotta have a second.
Oh,
I second that motion.
sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. And I move that the proposed project meets the development and design standards and the Oread Neighborhood Design Guidelines for the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District.
I second that motion as well.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Miscellaneous items, historic survey plan.
So just wanted to give you a little bit of update on the committee that's working on the historic survey plan. We had a really good meeting and got a lot of hard work done, and we'll want to discuss this more when you have a full commission. But they did come up with a preliminary plan that we'll bring back to you in December once we go through and do some final work on it. We looked at KHRI and what's been surveyed and what hasn't, particularly looking at pressure from development from around the university areas. And one of the things that we recognized when we were at the committee meeting is that when the East Lawrence survey was done, there are gaps in the survey. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
Because there's no action to take.
This is a picture of the map in KHRI that shows the blue squares are what has been surveyed. And if you'll notice, there are sections of East Lawrence where they didn't survey all of the buildings. And the survey is quite old and very limited in what it has on the survey forms. So throughout the discussion with the survey committee, we were looking at maybe the priority for the next survey for us to work on would be the East Lawrence neighborhood, so we can get an idea of those properties that weren't surveyed at all, and also update the survey like we just did for Old West Lawrence. And then we looked at some other areas in the city where there had not been a good survey. And if you'll notice here in the Babcock neighborhood, none of this has been surveyed. And so that was another goal of the committee to look at doing that. So what, just kind of wanted to give you an update on where that survey committee is, and what we plan to do is come back to you in December with a memo and an outline of priorities, and then the commission can look at those and agree if that's the work plan that you want to proceed over the next few years.
You can go ahead and talk about all of our priorities. I mean, just name all of our priorities right now, correct?
Sure, I
To
just
let people know that we came up with some priorities.
Yeah, and it's going to be on your December agenda
Right, but
too.
just to let people
Like I
know in
just
advance.
said, East Lawrence was number one, and then the Babcock neighborhood was the second one. And then we were looking over at Schwegler because it's so close to the university. And I don't remember who was fourth.
I know we had
Pinckney neighborhood.
Pinckney.
Pinckney. Was Schwegler third or?
I just want to
I didn't bring it
clarify
with me.
with the priorities that East Lawrence was the number one priority for a historic survey. The second priority was a combination of the Babcock neighborhood and the eastern section of the Centennial neighborhood. With that map that's up there, 19th Street is the dividing line between those two, and so the discussion was suggesting a historic survey that combines both the Babcock neighborhood and the eastern Centennial neighborhood.
Just real quick, these are reconnaissance surveys, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
One question that I have, Lynn, is the subcommittee planning to meet again ahead of the December meeting?
I have some information that I'm going to send you, and we'll probably do it by email so that we can make sure and get this on the December meeting.
Okay.
Sir, any other discussion or comments, questions about the survey plan?
It's a good plan.
Okay. All right, has everybody had a chance to review the 2025 proposed calendar?
Right,
Sure.
let's do it.
I didn't think Does miscellaneous have public comment? Technically, no.
If you want to entertain it, that's up to the commission.
I'm open to
Well,
public
I'm open to
comment.
it too, as well.
Okay, come on up.
Because I also came to support the East Lawrence request, but when I realized that there was going to be some discussion about the survey plan, I thought I'd just defer and talk about all of these at the same time. I've talked some with Lynn over the last 6 months or so about what I hope will be an initiative by the Preservation Alliance over the next year or so to use some of LPA's resources to help augment the resources the city can bring to bear and get the survey plan moving as quickly as possible. And I think I can't speak for the board without without getting some board action on it, but I'm pretty sure that there's a fair amount of support on the board for that, and that we're likely to do that. And we've had at least one generous offer from someone outside the organization to contribute to that kind of effort. And LPA has resources now that it can bring to bear on that. And when the Turnhalter project gets an occupancy certificate, we're going to have a substantial amount of money and can use the earnings from that to do this on a regular basis. All that said, one of the things that I think might help the committee, y'all, both that are working on the moratorium plan or the plan for how to deal with these things on a going forward basis, and also on the survey committee, is that I think there are folks from some of the close-in neighborhoods that would be happy to participate either in brainstorming, not as voting members of the group, but sort of as a steering committee or help the planning committee. And I know the LPA would be happy to. Some of us would be happy to play that role as well. When the city gets a survey plan in place, and when the reconnaissance is done, and when there is some preliminary determination about what structures might be eligible, we think that the moratorium ordinance or series of moratorium ordinances, perhaps including the next one, including the East Lawrence area, ought to ensure that any building that's been identified as potentially eligible would be subject to a demolition moratorium until such time as a comprehensive survey, a complete survey could be done.
Right.
And perhaps until the time that the community is able to decide whether they want to seek historic protection for a district. Because this same pressure that is immediate in University Place is going to exist in every other neighborhood close in. And we ought to be planning now
We are.
for a way to sort of deal with that on an ongoing basis. So to the extent that you think our help would be useful, Lynn and Dennis and I talk regularly about a variety of things, and we'd be happy to help. But I suspect that there are other neighborhood folks that have some ideas about how this might work as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
I do encourage you to kind of get your ducks in a row and bring that comment in December.
Oh, we will.
Yeah,
We will.
and kind of figure out,
We'll do it in writing, too.
yeah, what it looks like to assist, like, how you are and are not willing, kind of be ready. I think what you're talking about is going to be covered in the kind of new demolition ordinance. Instead of doing it neighborhood, we're looking at 50-year-old structures, period. So it's an ongoing, we are working on it now. And we also feel that sense of urgency. It just takes time to do this.
When you say we, who's we?
So at the last meeting, Joy had two subcommittees, your
Right.
survey plan and then the demolition ordinance committee.
Well, I thought you were the
And she-
historic marker committee. Okay.
No.
All right, got it. Okay. All right,
And when we went over the
okay,
committee reports, yeah.
right, okay.
Okay.
My memory's fading, okay.
All right, so back to the schedule. Is there a motion to adopt or approve the 2025 slated schedule?
Oh, he's got his hand up.
No, motion to approve.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And meeting's adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
That was lightning fast.